a meditation retreat, a sacred vow, and then violence at the door. In this episode, I share a deeply personal story with some tears about the day an attack disrupted a peaceful meditation retreat. And what followed was not just fear and confusion, but a test of compassion, courage, and complexity. So, how do we hold multiple truths when they do not easily coexist? And how do we stay in community when it hurts? This is a story of listening, of loss, and a brave decision to build something new. Join us next.
If you've ever felt fear, doubt, or despair about the future of our country, you're not alone. Terrified Nation is a podcast for those ready to face hard truths with open hearts. Hosted by Debilyn Molineaux, each episode explores how we can move beyond division and build a society rooted in care, courage, and connection. If this resonates with you, hit follow and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Now here's your host, Debilyn Molineaux.
Welcome back to Terrified Nation. I'm your host, Debilyn Molineaux. This season, we are diving into the big emotions of anger, fear, despair, a few others. And we're looking for how to move through them towards a quiet determination of action. How to notice what is ours to do. And today's episode is about a moment where violence interrupted a retreat that I was attending. And how I responded, how other people around me responded in this kind of search for our truth and compassion and courage to rise up and meet the moment. And I'll just be honest, we were unprepared. We did not know how to overcome our shock in a quick way to be helpful. But here, let me dive in a little deeper into what actually happened. So I was in Boulder, Colorado on a sunny Colorado Sunday afternoon, June 1st. I had traveled there to attend a meditation retreat. I was preparing to take the Bodhisattva vow, which is this ancient promise to live with compassion and to ease the suffering of others. It was meant to be really sacred and nourishing and quiet and a sense of belonging and togetherness for the people that I have been studying with for 2.5 years. And in the retreat, we were meditating and we were listening to Dharma talks. And, there's a little dancing that happens. And on day 2, we had just stepped out for lunch when something changed. The first thing I noticed, besides being hungry, as we're walking together, towards the Pearl Street Mall, was we could hear the sound of angry voices in the air, and people were pausing on the sidewalk. The people were kind of gathered in a semicircle around this one angry white man who was yelling, and I couldn't really hear what he was saying, but he had his shirt off and he was just yelling with such rage at the people that were observing him. And then there was this other white man who was yelling back at him. And there were some statues that were in the way, so I couldn't see the whole thing that was going on. I was about, 40, 50 feet from him. And internally, I was just kind of rolling my eyes because it's like, can we get over the angry man thing already? It looked like street theater. And I actually joked to one of my friends about it, saying, this feels performative. And there was also something else. There was this ripple of fear in the air. You can just tell when people are afraid. And that's what was happening here. And so we were, looking for a place to eat lunch and not thinking this is about us. And a few minutes later, this young boy in a yarmulke approached us, and he was very calm, eerily calm, asking people for help and for bandages. In the distance, sirens were wailing, and people began running up to the intersection because we're on a walking mall, so there's no traffic. People began running up to the corner, trying to direct the police into where this incident was happening. And for me, it still didn't click. I hadn't seen any fire. I had not seen any victims. I just saw two white guys yelling at each other. And so I thought it was just like a normal scuffle that, or a protest, given that the young man had a yarmulke on, that had gone sideways. And because we didn't see anyone hurt, my group and I continued to lunch. And we chose this rooftop setting that was actually across the street from the park. We could not see the park from where we sat. The sirens were going off in the background, and we just continued to ignore them while we ate lunch and laughed and talked about possibilities of things that we might do together. And towards the end of lunch, we got a text message that the retreat center had been evacuated. Well, all of our stuff was in there. And when we came back down from the rooftop, recognizing we're going to have to figure out what to do, there was crime scene tape everywhere. And that's when it really hit me. This was not performance. This wasn't just a fight in the street. This was an attack. And we all did manage to find our way back to the retreat center. We were able to retrieve our belongings, but it was evacuated. Our retreat, our preparation to take these bodhisattva vows to help extend compassion and ease suffering had been interrupted by violence. The reason the retreat center was evacuated, we found out later, was because the attacker's car was parked. This is really hard to talk about, but it was parked in front of the retreat center, and it was filled with unused Molotov cocktails. And so about an hour later, we gathered over Zoom, and we continued, trying to process what had happened. And we shared what we saw. There was many of our Sangha mates who saw different things. We shared what we felt. And we also shared like our guilt of having not rendered aid, even though it was probably a situation beyond what our training prepared us for. And we felt powerless in the moment to do anything. And then we felt guilt for not having responded. By the next morning, we were allowed back into the retreat center, and something had really shifted. One of our community members, who is Jewish, asked our teacher privately if we could just talk about the violence and the rise of anti-Semitism, not only in Boulder in this event, but around the world. He was visibly impacted and shaken by what had happened outside the door where we were meeting. He wanted us to pause and reflect together and talk more about this rising anti-Semitism. And again, privately, our teacher declined. Now, I believe the intention of that declining to talk about the geopolitical conflict was to keep us on focus for why we were there, to prepare ourselves to take this bodhisattva vow and to steady ourselves for this lifetime of service, not to be derailed by violence or the news cycle, which is likely what would happen if we had opened it up to the whole Sangha, who all had different perceptions about what was going on. But our Sangha mate felt unseen and unheard, and he made the painful decision to leave. I can't say that I blamed him. And before he left, I was actually the last person who spoke with him. And he shared his sorrow and his fear and this weight of feeling erased. I listened and held space, and I told him I understood his grief to the best of my ability. And I also shared my own tension that I also wanted our collective moment to stay centered in the spiritual practice, not to become a referendum on global conflict. that we actually felt powerless to shift in that moment. And I offered this. I said that perhaps as the Sangha, our role wasn't to solve the geopolitical conflict or talk about it in that way, but to help him feel whole in that moment and to witness his suffering with compassion. And maybe that was the wrong offer or question. Maybe it's not either or. Maybe the real challenge is holding both this personal deep pain and our continuing work in the world through our own inner transformation. Somehow it's all connected together and we don't know how to do it yet. So he left and we were all really hurt. He was hurting. We all experienced pain over his absence. Now, I want to say I don't believe that our teacher was wrong, and I don't think that our Sangha mate was wrong. The hard part is that we don't always have the strength or the skills to hold everything together. And because of that, I have made a decision. I want to help build that container where we can explore these hard conversations. And so initially, I'm going to start just with the Sangha, with the people who were there in Boulder with us. And it's just going to be open and invitational, where we can have these hard conversations and practice staying curious, where our discomfort doesn't push us away from each other, but draws us closer. And because sometimes the bodhisattva path doesn't begin like out there talking about things in the geopolitical world. It starts in here within our own community. So sometimes violence knocks at the door and the truth is complicated. And our work begins inside the sacred spaces where we thought we were safe. I think it starts with us choosing to stay in community, even when it hurts, not in cases of abuse, of course, but continuing to be that voice and that presence within the community that really wants to embrace us all. Our healing starts with non-reactivity and managing our own internal tension. It starts with listening when it would be easier to look away. I think moving forward, we have to start with one brave conversation. Just one. Let's be brave together. And let's love each other the way that we want to be loved. If this episode moved you, please share it with someone that you care about. And leave a review on your favorite podcast platform because it helps new people find Terrified Nation and go with us on this journey. Join me next time.
That's Terrified Nation, a podcast from American Future. If this episode moved you, please help others find it. Leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. For early access to new episodes, become a paid subscriber at terrifiednation.com. Join us next time.